Imagine this. You're going on a family road trip with your siblings, and the Huffington Post gave me 3 different scenarios, and you gotta see which one you can relate to the most. The first scenario is you've been planning for weeks, you have everything packed, you have reservations made, the hotel is booked, and the car is full of gas. The second scenario is you're haphazardly grabbing things and putting it in a bag, grabbing some snacks, throwing it in. You'll probably have to buy a few things when you get there because you're forgetting it, and you're gonna have to fill up the car on the way because you haven't been prepared. And then the third scenario is you're just there for fun. Sounds like fun. You probably won't do many contributions except maybe you'll tell a funny story or two and eat some of the snacks along the way. If you can relate to the first scenario, you're most likely the oldest child. If you can relate to the second, you're a middle child. And if you can relate to the third, you are probably the youngest. So your family environment has a big impact on who you become as a person, and how your parents and your siblings treat you, or if you don't have siblings, is a big influence on your life. One of the biggest influences on this is your birth order in your family, whether you're the first child, middle child, or last child. This influences your family environment, which in turn influences your personality. Your family environment, one of the biggest influences is your parents. They treat each child different. The first child, they're always over attentive. They're always looking over their shoulder every step of the way because they don't want to mess up as a parent because you're their first child. And they're always making sure you're doing everything good. If you get a 98, why wasn't it 100? A minus, why wasn't it an A? And they pass many of these traits down to you. If you're a middle child, normally you get the least attention in your family. Your parents are always helping your younger sibling, like putting them to bed, or they're helping your older sibling, maybe like college apps, or they're helping them with homework. Because of this lack of attention, a lot of times you get a close group of friends that that allow you to get the attention you need, or you become a troublemaker because that's how you get your attention. And then the youngest child is the baby of the family, but a lot of times the parents are more confident in their ability, so they're more lenient and give you freedom to do what you want, which then in turn builds some independency. Your siblings treat each other different too. The first child, they always look to as a leader. They always look up to you, and your parents always say stuff like, you should have known better, you're the oldest. And then you always have to be a good example for your sibling, which builds your leadership skills. As a middle child, you're always competitive. You see your older siblings succeeding, like if you're on a bike, maybe you have training wheels, and your older sibling goes by on their bike. They zoom by on 2 wheels. If you're swimming in the shallow end, maybe you see them swimming in the deep end, and you want to do that. Also, you're always the mediator between your older and younger siblings. You hash things out in between them, and you build your negotiating skills. The youngest sibling has the least amount of responsibility. The older siblings get it all, so then the younger siblings can then in turn work on the creativity and stuff like that. So the effects of these is that the first child is always an overachiever. They're always over-responsible, and they get a lot of the perfectionist qualities that their parents passed down to them from being over-attentive. A lot of times they get leadership roles like a CEO or in the medical field or law field. And the National Bureau of Economic Research found that the firstborn had a higher educational attainment than the secondborn, who in turn had higher educational attainment than the third, and so on. As a middle child, you're always the peacemaker. You are always hashing things out in between your siblings, and this builds your entrepreneurial skills for later in life. A lot of times, the Huffington Post says that Abraham Lincoln, JFK, Winston Churchill, Bill Gates, and Donald Trump all were middle children. They had power careers that allowed them to use the negotiating skills they built as a middle child, and they also got the attention they lacked from their parents. But opposing this, according to the Bustle, economic Joseph Doyle researched the curse of the second child, which made them more rebellious, and the middle children were always more likely to go to jail as an adult. The youngest child is always the life of a party. They're more outgoing, they're more likable and charming, and they built this from always trying to get their older siblings' attention. This later develops them into the entertainment field, or it can also turn them into good teachers. So, as an only child, your lack of siblings and lack of parenting, your parents just being around you and your lack of siblings builds your maturity, so you're always more mature at a young age. So, as I researched, I talked to my family about some stories to try to find one, and we came up with one. And so it was like a dark winter morning, My dad took our dog in the walk in the prairie, which is a wooded area by an elementary school near us. He was gone for 45 minutes or so, and then we heard a barking at the door. We went and looked, and it was just my dog there, and my dad was nowhere to be seen. So my mom called him a few times, and he didn't pick up, so she began to panic. She went out in her car looking for him, driving around, and as she was doing this, my older sister, trying to be a leader, was trying to get us ready for school that day and trying to just get us ready to take on the day. However, my younger sister, Molly, she was messing around, watching TV, and wasn't listening to Alyssa, or my oldest sister. So me and Ella, the middle children, were trying to hash things out in between them and mediate it so that we could just get to school and get through the day. My mom and dad later came home, and it turns out the dog just ran from my dad. So, as we can see, the effects of your birth order affects your personality, affects your environment, which in turn affects your personality. But in no way should a person let this define how they act, because this doesn't take into account every family dynamic. This is just if you were wondering maybe why you have a different personality than your siblings and why you act how you do.